Welcome, guys. Today, finally, I'm getting around to talking about some PvP news, which dropped late last week, and I procrastinated the hell out of on. I'm going to put this out just before I go off to do a Guild Wars 1 stream and possibly finish off Nightfall. And really, this is some very cool information here. Details that ArenaNet gave us about how Season 5 for PvP is going to operate. Now, also in the video, at the end, I'm going to talk about 2 guild chats they've ran. Those are the ArenaNet live streams where we get to see a little bit of behind the scenes talk about the development of recent patches. So they're talking about cracking the ice, they're talking about Aurene, but mostly this video is probably going to be about the PvP side stuff because there are going to be a huge amount of changes. So to recap you all, if you're a bit out of the loop, when Heart of Thorns came out, they did do some big changes for the PvP scene, and they decided to implement seasons, something people have been asking for a long time. They implemented a very rudimentary and poor, in my opinion, in-game leaderboard. Really, there was better rewards and a way to progress throughout seasons for this first year of Heart of Thorns. That was seasons 1 through 4. Now, in seasons 1 through 4, there were much better rewards. There was a legendary backpack, and we did see a massive bump in the player base over on the PvP side of things. A big bump in your average player. Many more of us are doing it, and the PvP has been stronger in Guild Wars 2 than it has been for a long time. Some people romanticize how the PvP scene was and how big it was in the first, 6 months of Guild Wars 2, or the first year of Guild Wars 2, but really, it got pitifully small, and there were a lot of improvements. But seasons 1 through 4 were not perfect by any stretch. A lot of people were getting legend, including myself, finishing off that league, potentially, theoretically, being some of the top tier players, when really we weren't. And a lot of people were sort of viewing climbing divisions during a season as just another kind of reward track and way to earn money and progression that they should be getting, rather than something that places them and really tells people what their skill level is like. So there have been problems, and Season 5, the theoretically first season of the new year, which will be starting just tomorrow as I put this video out, Season 5 is seeking to make some big changes, and that's what I'm going to be talking about largely today. So there are a lot of huge reveals. There was a video, which you can see a little bit of in the background, mostly a blog post. I'm going to try and distill it down, make it understandable to the best of us. And I will say, by the way, though I've PvP'd a lot this year, I'm not necessarily the best with this stuff, but I'll see what I can do. So first, this season, as I've actually talked about in the past, is going to be a solo duo only season. Now, there's a lot of discussion we can do on that, and we have done on that before. I don't feel the need to go into it again. If you missed that big fundamental change, why it's going into the game, the community poll for it, by the way, people voted on this. There's a link you can click on screen right now that will take you to my discussion on that. It's itself quite long, but that is a change that's going forward for Season 5. Not necessarily all the seasons beyond that as well, but at least for Season 5, it's solo duo only. And that's, in general, if you don't want to watch that whole discussion of mine, I think is a positive thing. Moving on, let's talk about some of the totally new things they talked about. Matchmaking. Now, in seasons 1 to 4, okay, there are 2 big things you need to understand about with matchmaking and how that worked in the old seasons, right? There were 2 things. There was, number 1, an internal rating, right? You could never see someone's internal rating, but this was kind of a numeric measure of your skill, and it was always trying to match you with appropriate people. So you'd be matched into other people with a skill level roughly around yours. Now, that wasn't visible to anyone, but we knew it was there, okay? And then also, when you played ranked, there was also this idea of pips. So if you won a game, you got a pip. On a win streak, you would get 2 pips. You couldn't get games if you were more than 15 pips away from someone else. So both of these 2 things, your internal rating and these pips, would be used to find your matches. So in the last year, we did have pretty quick matchmaking, but you could try and matchmake in, and there could be a lot of people around who had the perfect equivalent skill level for you, but you'd never be able to find them because they were too many pips away from you, all right? Now, pips also were doing something else. Pips, for example, were visible to people, okay? Getting pips gave you divisions all the way up to legendary, and that's what would be displayed next to your nameplates, right? That's part of your reward. You're also bluntly rewarded for pips, right? You got rewarded as you went up tiers of pips, as you crossed various thresholds, by going up entire divisions. They'd give you straight up liquid gold, a bunch of new PvP currencies, and so on and so on and so on. So what's important to look at here for seasons 1 to 4 was that you had pips, which were both a matchmaking system and they were a reward system at once. And that doesn't work, okay? Again, this is something we've talked about before, but I will go over this briefly. As you can probably see, right, the two aims of pips kind of conflict with one another. It wants to be giving people pips so that people get rewarded for playing PvP, but then also it's for matchmaking, so it's seeking to give people perfect games where you won't get pips anymore, which makes PvP unrewarding. In a perfect world, okay, take it this way. In a perfect world, players should be getting great rewards for playing great games. You should see a tough match, and you should be excited about the challenge of that touch match. The best thing in PvP should be a close win. That should be the best feeling of all. And a complete shutout match, where it just snowballs in favor of one team who gets 500 to 30 on the other. That game shouldn't really feel good for the losers, obviously, or the winners. The winners should be bored by something like that, okay? In Season 1 to 4, that wasn't quite true. Slam out victories still felt somewhat good for the winning side. I'll admit, I quite liked getting a slam out victory because it meant you got pips, and pips was what you needed for your rewards. And more importantly, very close or well match-made games where it's a really difficult win or loss, they felt agonizing and they felt unwanted because ultimately they meant that you had a good chance of getting no rewards anymore because you weren't going to get a pip. So there was a bad balance at play there, okay? The second that matchmaking starts succeeding and giving you balanced games is the second that PvP became unrewarding. So here's one of the most significant changes for Season 5. Pips are now becoming completely obsolete for matchmaking. They are now purely a reward system. It's basically now is another version of a reward track. You have PvP reward tracks, and during a season you get pips as a sort of another one, I guess, which is a bit weird, but maybe they'll adjust that in the future. But pips are rewards. In theory, that odd balance should now go away, and you're playing great matches, and the rewards come anyway. Pips will be coming in whether just for you playing, whether you win or for whether you lose, okay? They're also saying at the same time they rebalanced all of the rewards that come from that. So I think they probably changed Shards of Glory to be a little bit more rare. We've already seen people make massive money off of their investments on those. They've probably done things like increase some of the other rewards. They flat out did state that they'd increase the amount of gold you get from PvP playing during a season, which is good. And they seem to have added a new currency as well, which will give you ascended gear. And there's a new armor set, like a totally new skin set you can go for, which is a bit of a tweak on an old one. So you can get ascended gear from PvP now, and they've just made it all a lot more enticing to play, and that I'm pretty happy with because I'm someone who really likes ascended gear and does a lot of PvE, and also I'm someone who plays a lot of PvP, so that's pretty much perfect for me. So also the benefit here of changing the pips like this, removing the 15 pip matchmaking influence, is that the matchmaking itself will be even faster and even quicker and even more accurate too, and I guess that's a big sell. Some people seem to think that matchmaking in Guild Wars 2 is super slow, but for your average player, it's really not. When you're a very high-end player, it will slow down a lot, but for your average player, that wasn't much of a problem, but it will be even less of a one from now, so that's a huge change. Moving on, let's talk about something else that's changed in Season 5. Some of the more interesting things, really. Do you remember that internal rating, okay, that we all had before, but we couldn't see? That's now becoming visible. Okay, so this is going to be a game where you can actually see it now, and you'll see how winning and losing affects that. And remember all those old divisions, Sapphire, Emerald, Ruby, so on, that would appear next to your name? They're all going away, and they're being replaced with more traditional ones: Bronze, Silver, Gold, Platinum, and then finally Legendary. I'm not entirely sure why they're replacing the old ones. I guess it's because they want to distance themselves as much as possible from what Seasons 1 to 4 was, and the newer seasons, if you see someone who's gold, then that has more meaning than perhaps having seen someone who was emerald before or something. So they've moved away, but basically that internal rating will dictate the division you're in, and it will be one of these classic divisions now. So this is very, very, very similar to other successful PvP games you will have seen out there. In Season 5, you won't have a ruby icon next to your nameplate. You'll have something like, yeah, gold, okay? And this will have nothing to do with pips. It's purely about your previously internal skill rating and nothing else that you can now see. To go along with that, and this one's huge, and I'm really, really, really happy, okay? There's now another version of the in-game leaderboard, and it's going to be visible right there. It's much better than the old one. Look at this. Seriously, look at the screenshot in the background right now. This is amazing, and I don't see enough people hyped about this. This is just like, basically, if you've played PvE recently since Heart of Thorns and you've checked out the adventures, this is like the adventures leaderboards, which were great. What you can do here is you can look at the top players, you can compare yourself to friends, you can compare yourself to guild worldies. You can see where you are like globally. That's excellent. And I think that PvP really needed this for so long. I mean, think about it. We had that released and that implemented for the game at the Lords of Heart of Thorns. It's almost crazy to me that the first few seasons never had something like that. There have been so many crappy and half-hearted and weak PvP in-game leaderboard systems in the past that the fact that they finally have a really good one now, is wonderful. So I'm very, very, very happy. They also, by the way, point out that the top 250, and that's not going to be relevant for many of us, but I'll say it anyway, if you want to aim for it, the top 250 at the season will be the one that gets the titles. Again, another problem with Season 1 through 4 is there's all these PvP titles now that people earn, and they really don't mean anything. But so that it's just 250 people will be getting titles that they're competing for. And I think that is also very cool. So if you're going for that, you should know. Also, another big change, they're adding decay. So decay wasn't a thing before. You wouldn't lose pips for stopping playing PvP. What this would mean in Seasons 1 through 4 is you had people like me who would just grind our way up, finish it all, and literally there's this idea of finishing it, which there shouldn't be, and then we'd leave PvP for months and months and months. And so, yeah, matchmaking gets quite poor for the people really invested continuing to try to play at the very end. Well, now they're adding decay, so if you go in there and you try and you get all the way up to gold and you're like, that's good enough for me, well, if you stop playing, it will go down and you will lose divisions and that badge next to your name will go away. So you have to be not just active in that season in general, but you have to be active very recently too as a PvPer to prove that you are the best of the best. And those top 250 people, they're not going to be people who have just parked alt accounts up there that have got really good ratings that are never going to go away. They will decay off very fast. You'll have people playing their main accounts and hopefully being rewarded for actually being the best of the best. So that's awesome. I think that's really good. Another important thing about Season 5 is the way that it's going to, or Season 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on, is the way that the seasons will reset. So once Season 5 ends, there is going to be a soft reset. What's going to happen is everyone is going to get squashed together a bit closer. So the top player of the entire game at the end of Season 5 will still be the top player at the start of Season 6, but they will be squashed much closer to like the global average, to where everyone else is. And that means that the guy in second place, the guy in third place, the guy in 10th place, they're all a lot closer to player number 1 now and might overtake him quite quickly. So everybody's going to get squashed together at the start of each season, and then obviously there's going to be a lot of turbulence and a lot to play for. And then on top of that too, there are going to be placement matches. So some of you might not be familiar with this idea, but basically when you start Season 6 or Season 5, the first 10 games you play, that skill rating you have is going to be really volatile. It can go up a lot, it can go down a lot based on your successes or your losses in those first 10 games, right? Those are your placement matches. And where you end at the end of those placement matches, you can kind of consider your starting point. And what this will do is it will accelerate the players who are too good way up ahead, and it will get the people just starting out where they get appropriate matches for themselves. And then after the placement matches are done, your rating can obviously still change. It will just be a bit more stable and a bit more solid, which is good. You might think that a volatile rating's a good thing because you're like, oh, I want to climb really, really quickly. A volatile rating's a really bad thing. It makes it worse at representing people's skill over a long period of time. And also, it's very frustrating to like have a very volatile rating where you lose a single game and you lose tons and tons and tons of progress. Trust me, I think many of us have been there depending on the games that we've played in the past. So that's the way it's going to work. That's how your placement matches will be handled out. I'm curious how many people will just rage quit out of an entire season because they get like 10 bad placement matches. But 10 matches is pretty good to redeem yourself and get a couple of good ones in there at least if you've been feeling like you're having a pretty unlucky streak. So those are the main differences. A couple more things that are really big to me, at least, that also are going in with this season. They're removing personal score. Okay, this is really, really cool. Personal score, you might be like, what's personal score? Personal score, to be honest with you, was confusing anyway. This was the little number you'd get when you were PvPing during matches. It had nothing to do with the points your team got. It had nothing to do with whether you were going to win or whether you were going to lose. It was just like a little thing that represented your contribution to the match. So if you kill someone, you would get 5 personal score, right, for that kill. If you cap a node, you'd get 10. If you defend a node, you'd get... Yeah, and so you guys see, right? Like, this was the number that would slowly stack up. Very rarely you'd see it get as high as maybe like 300 or something like that, right? What this was trying to do was it was serving as a vague clue as to who was pulling their weight in the middle of a match, but really it was a total failure in that. Okay, it wasn't a very good representative. Depending on the role, depending on your playstyle, depending on your build, that number could vary massively, and obviously it's not indicative of some game-winning plays that someone might make, but is not being rewarded. What it actually did was it created this really sort of crappy meta game where people within the match would be trying to push their personal score up really high, and this meant they were playing badly, not well, like sticking about on a node when they didn't have to, and that's been there since 2012. That's always been a plague on PvP. So they're getting rid of it, which is good. The system's a lot clearer. You don't have to explain what that is anymore. Bye-bye. You will now, however, get raw stats to see instead. Now, raw stats kind of are already a part of the game, but I guess we're going to see them the whole way through the match now. So instead, you'll just be able to look at the damage people have dealt, the healing that people have dealt, the kills, the deaths, and stuff like that. And you will be able to see in more certain terms what people's contribution has been to that PvP match, instead of this weird, like, personal score system, as we've said, that they had before. So this is super cool. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that affects things. And also now you get to see, oh, this game I, supported a lot better. Maybe that's because I was looking at the positioning of my allies a bit better. Or this time I managed to do a lot more damage, and that meant I land a lot more of my key bursts and so forth. And that's going to be cool on so many different levels. So that's one thing. Number two, we just talked about this a little bit before, but yes, they are getting rid of Stronghold. I think that discussion I actually did in the original link we did at the start of the video. But not only are they getting rid of Stronghold, which is, again, is very smart. People shouldn't be bypassing the whole progression and idea of skill by playing a different game type where they have no real competition. But they're also adding Skyhammer. Skyhammer's coming in. Now, some of you oldies will cringe at that idea. Ranked Skyhammer? Don't forget, Skyhammer has had major reworks this year. It is not what it once was. And so it will be nice to see a bit of change of scenery, in my opinion. I wonder when we'll see stuff like Spirit Watch, Colosseum, Capricorn. I wonder if we're ever going to get any new maps as well coming forward. This seems like the Season 5 patch isn't going to be adding one. And, yeah, that should be pretty nice at least, and I suppose Season 6 and beyond will continue to change those maps up. Another thing, there's no Legendary this year. That's an interesting sort of omission from the blog post. You remember they originally, when Heart of Thorns came out, had this idea that each year in PvP, you'd have a different back to work on, and that maybe there'd be some alternate way of getting the old one. Well, they've said nothing here. We are moving into next year now. No new backpack. That's a bit of a shame. In fact, I think in retrospect, Legendary backpacks weren't a great part of Heart of Thorns. But hey, I guess they are still allowing last year's back piece to be obtainable through the next few seasons, so that's cool. And I guess we do get that new armor set, but it's not really the same. I wonder what you guys think on that one. And last but not least, this one is maybe one of the bigger things for me. Was a pretty interesting clue in one of the images that they never talked about in the video, they never talked about on the blog post, but it was there, and one of the devs did tease about it on Reddit. There's actually a guy over rank 80 in PvP. Alright, so let's be clear. This is a bit like the personal score thing. It's like another system that's there that's a little confusing, and we have to be clear about it. So, ranks, okay, are that bar you fill as you play a lot of PvP. So you start at rank 1, and you're a rabbit, I believe, and then it's been a long time since I've done this, and then you become like a deer, and then you become a dolliac, and as you climb up, right? It's like the PvP version of leveling. It's really a very superficial thing. You can't play ranked until you're rank 20 or something, I think, and it ends at 80, just like there are 80 levels in PvE, okay? Rank 80 has been the max. It's always been the max, and at that point you are dragon. Well, for those of you that don't know, back in 2012, and for maybe the first year of Guild Wars 2, this was a really interesting system because it had been designed to be ultra long, right? Super long term, and it was you had very, very, very few people who had climbed very high up it. There were a handful of people who were like in the Phoenix ranks, around 70, I think it was, right when it was ending. Okay, like so for the first year, this was really interesting. And one of my favorite things about PvP way back when was leveling mine up. I got to Shark in the end. I was like 62 or something. I was really proud of that. I thought that was really good, and then one day, with Feature Pack 1, I believe it was, they kind of just took all of that away, and pretty much everyone who was actively PvPing was now 80, and it became a non-mechanic and non-system, and it got really boring. Well, on this, they seem to have changed that. That was one of my most disliked patches for PvP. I really didn't like that change. It took a lot of the reward and progression out of PvP for me. And now, in this screenshot, we see someone is higher than 80. And the cap seems to have gone away. And that could be undoing what I really disliked before. So I wonder whether they're going to view this as a sort of world versus world rank style thing, where it might not mean anything. You might not get more animals, but it just keeps going and going and going. It is going to be really fun to see what that means. That might not, by the way, even be a Season 5 thing. It could just be an internal thing that we'll see at some point in the future that they were playing around with. But the fact that Dev teased about it on Reddit maybe might mean something a little more. So there you go, guys. That is all of the juicy PvP details. In summation, I do think Season 5 is looking to be freaking awesome. It does look like it's a lot stronger than the other seasons were. The seasons already had added a lot to Guild Wars 2, right? Don't let this video give you some false perspective that the previous seasons were terrible. They certainly weren't very good at their job, but they did a lot for PvP, and we're just getting even more here. I think that hopefully this will start feeding a lot more people into being competitive. What's important now, I think, for the scene is that there are a lot of community-run events that start going on out in the custom servers in those lobbies, so that the actual teams have got something to do. Because don't forget, this is all for solo duo stuff. So we shall see how Season 5 goes, and I'll keep you guys in the loop. Last year, after Season 1 ended, I gave you my experiences of it as it closed out, and I guess I will do that for this because it is a wholly different beast, it would seem. So I'll see you about that in, I don't know, a couple of months. Okay, so with that moved on, let's talk a little bit about guild chat now. Again, I really don't have too much to say. This is why I wanted to put that annotation at the start of the video. So guild chat, they were discussing stuff to do with a crack in the ice. There were two different streams. One of them was very specifically about Aurene. It was about the mission Precocious Aurene. It was about their ideas of what it's like to implement this baby dragon, how they got her design, the massive amounts of things that were mixed into it. Like, they had to think about the fact she was female, it was going to be baby, they wanted it to be cute, they wanted it to have glint influences, that it should have had Morgemoth influences, it should have Kraukatoric influences, and how they came to the eventual design, which I thought was very cool. And there were a lot of, like, interesting questions there. Like, even the idea that people didn't like the cute design was addressed. I was in that camp. And it was kind of cool to hear them say, look, think about any ferocious beach. Most of them are cute. Even, like, baby squids are cute. And I do stand by what they're saying there, really. Aurene's cute, and I'm not really too into the cutesy stuff. But what's important is that when she's grown up, she's a beast and she's deadly. I really encourage you guys to check out that stream and watch it, because I think you really will pull a lot more away than some crappy little summary that I can do for you here. But then there was another stream as well where they were talking about the map in general. They were talking about the masteries. They were talking about all kinds of things, bugs that occurred, my little pickings of important things that came from that. There was some massive bug. If you look at the screen in the background, Aurene's scale was thrown off ridiculously at one point and she was giant. So this is, one, a funny bug, but also let's wooden potato style do some shitty armchair speculation over it. What if, guys, this scaling bug existed because this is to do, they've got some engine thing, they're doing something about making her slowly grow over the next few patches, and that is like one of her bigger sizes she'll be eventually. Tinfoil hat, think about it, they're doing that with Timey, right? Timey is slowly growing over the patches, they're going to scale Aurene up. All right, okay, or maybe it was just a bug. There was a suggestion in this stream that Coda's Reach and those staff skills will probably appear on new maps. In fact, they said it in almost no uncertain terms. And hey, maybe we can expect that. Thermal Propulsion appeared in future map. So yeah, maybe the next few maps will include another one in the Shiver Peaks. I would guess the Southern Shivers at this point. I would guess Thunderhead. Maybe that's another idea that we will be going there at some point, and we will probably get those that mastery relevant again, which I do think is important, that that's in more than just one place. There was a very, very, very cool quote, okay, and it was some good perspective on different kinds of community content. So I'll do a bigger discussion about this in a future video, but there was something going on with a ring recently, just last night, in fact, that was hidden in the Rising Flames patch and was finally found out by the community. But one of the developers sort of mentioned that when you're making content in these patches, there are two different things that you can make, right? You can make something for the individual to discover, such as when a player finds that chest under the water in the first mission of A Crack in the Ice, and you get the toys and you go and hand them in. That's something for an individual to discover, okay? Or you can make something for a community to discover. And something that a community to discover would be something like Coder's Blessing, where you have all of these very cryptic clues that would be ridiculously difficult to find and figure out all on your lonesome, but it's more of a collaborative effort, and the idea is the community at large gets to enjoy and play in finding all of that stuff out. And I think that's really important to identify for a lot of us. ArenaNet sometimes gets some slack, sometimes there's a bit of turbulence or upheaval on the forums when a patch comes out, because like with Coder's Blessing, people say, oh, this is way too hard, this is too difficult, this is impossible. And what I think that's happening there is people are not realizing that was never a reward for an individual to discover. That was a reward for a community to discover. And it's something that uniquely MMOs can put in there very frequently and can actually do a lot of good. So you often don't find that kind of stuff in other games unless they're very, very obscure little Easter eggs that people are supporting. And so I think hearing the developer talk about that on the stream helped me identify something that they're doing. And maybe we'll talk a bit more about that with this ring from Rising Flames too. So they did also discuss the personal story thing, the story journal thing, where the missing Quaggan seemed to just be cut content. That question did get up on the stream. Their answer was a total cop-out, and they didn't address it at all. A lot of people have said to me with regard to this that, oh no, WP, it's this other thing, it's this other achievement. It's not the other thing, guys. That achievement clearly says that the last surviving member of that Quaggan group is the one on the roof that you get you finish the achievement off from and you get the last stanza from. Those Quaggan littered around the map are not the ones that are being referenced in the story. The ones being referenced in the story did not appear in the story. And the devs were just kind of like, oh yeah, they're just around. That is not an answer, damn it. Moving on, they never gave us an answer to the metal grate in the dredge area. I actually think this is some of the best environmental storytelling that the developers have done for a long time. So in the hot spring story, there's that giant hole, and if you swim down, you find that grate, and it looks like there might be dredge machines and stuff down there, the heat from the heart of Tyria, what could be there? There's all these questions running through everyone's minds when they swim down there, and it was asked to the devs, and it seemed like they didn't even have any idea for an answer. It was just sort of put in there to stop you going out of bounds. No, come on. Hopefully they're just pulling the wool over our eyes, and they're teasing us a bit on that, but I'd really like for some of the best environmental storytelling they've done in the past few years to have some real deeper meaning behind it, please. And finally, a little bit of speculation here that I want to close on the video on. We were talking about this on a stream quite recently. It sort of keys into Super Adventure Box, another tinfoil hat theory here. And I'm curious what you guys think about this. Let's talk about current events. So the stream did discuss this a little bit. They were asked, what's going on with current events? The burden of choice was amazing. You seem to be getting a grip on having a nice frequency there. They were complimenting patches. But since that Leyline Rift thing, we haven't had anything. What's going on? Where's the current events disappeared to? What's going on? And even one of the guys on the stream was a previously known current events dev who'd moved over. So did they dissolve? Well, on the stream, it was confirmed that the current events guys do still exist. But what they're doing was a very offhanded, probably Winter's Day and Halloween. Probably Winter's Day and Halloween. Not a very satisfying answer, is it, in multiple respects, but also look at what happened with Halloween. All that changed was some reward vendor updates, which were very well designed, in my opinion, and were the best thing they could do if they had to make the decision not to support Halloween much. And we got some new decorations, and the decorations were amazing too, so, you know, that's fine. But I'm expecting the same for Winter's Day. That's not really the same as the level that the current events guys have been doing. So what are they doing, all right? Here comes the theory, all right? Last year, when Super Adventure Box returned, they discussed that they couldn't update it because, and Josh Foreman went on a stream and said, it took 7 to 8 people, 6 to 7 or whatever months, okay, to implement this content and to actually update it and to progress it, all right? And that they just didn't have the time or the space for it. He made it sound at the time like there may never be another Super Adventure Box update, but there is a little bit of wiggle room that they might do something. Now, think about this. Super Adventure Box comes in 3 to 4 months, okay? Super Adventure Box comes in 3 to 4 months, and for the last 2 to 3 months, current events team disappeared. And the current events team might just be the right kind of size to support more Super Adventure Box content. So maybe Maybe no current event stuff, but it could be that World 3 will be coming. That's what I'm putting my chips on. That's where my money is. That's the big theory from Guild Chat that I got from an innocent little comment that they were working on Halloween and Winter's Day, which they could ultimately have been anyway. So there you go, guys. That is the roundup of a bit of news recently. Sorry it took me a while to put this one out. Do let me know again about any of this stuff that you might find interesting. Tell me or inform others if I've forgotten something important. And I promise we've got some more great videos coming up very soon. However, right now, I'm going to go complete Nightfall on a stream. So I'll catch you guys next time. And if you want to continue a bit of that PvP chat, there'll be a link in about 2 seconds to that other video coming right up for you. See you very soon, guys. Their attempts to have this division system and climbing through the divisions in this year hasn't been quite up to snuff. They don't think that people are being placed properly. So they're going for a lot of changes, but before they can really even start to think about that, there's a more fundamental issue that has to be addressed, and that is the kind of groups that are hitting the queues. So basically, what has been voted on a poll is that for Season 5, we are only able to queue in as a solo queuer or a duo queuer. 1 or 2 players, that is it. You cannot queue in with 3 people, 4 people, or 5 people. The entire season will run like that for ranked, and then they're going to assess what they do in the future. So at first, that might seem really crazy. It might be like, well, why would you do that? You're just cutting away people's ability to be competitive. How has this ended up with an almost